You might disappear in Fuqua for calling it Fuqua. I've seen people get beat up for way less than Fuqua Varina. Steve Murphy, alcoholic. It's great to be here tonight at another solid group of Alcoholics Anonymous. So my sobriety date is August 18th of 2019. I'm sponsored, and I sponsor men. And my home group is the There's a Solution group in Holly Springs, North Carolina. I've seen quite a few of you guys there, actually. Heard a couple of your stories there. And Steve M. didn't tell you that I know him really well because we actually slept together on a spiritual retreat, and it got real spiritual in that camper. So I know Steve better than he's letting on. We'll get into. If you want more details, just ask me after the meeting, and we'll tell you all the details. But also, I'm sure some of y'all are here because you thought you were going to hear him speak tonight because of the Steve M. down there. But unfortunately, you're going to have to hear my story instead. But I'll tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I'll tell you that there's a drastic difference between those things, what it was like and what it's like now. What I hope to convey today to you guys is that I was as hopeless as a human can get, and that I was completely dependent upon alcohol and other substances, and that a relationship with God, that in the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have got a life beyond my wildest dreams today. And that's all of a testament to what you guys have shown me and to my relationship with God. So I guess I'll get started. So I grew up in the Raleigh area. I'll tell you real quick how I got there. I was born in Florida from a family from Alabama, born in Florida, and in the early 80s, there was a serial killer in Tallahassee, Florida. Y'all might have heard of him. His name was Ted Bundy. And he had come from Washington State down to Florida, and college girls were coming up missing. And I've got two older sisters. And my dad told, he worked for a company called Radio Shack. Some of the older people in here might remember Radio Shack, but he told them, he said, y'all are either gonna move me somewhere or I quit. And they transplanted him up to Raleigh. So I actually moved to Raleigh because of a serial killer. And I'll tell you, my story didn't get any more normal from there, I promise. It only got weirder. So I grew up in the Raleigh area. I don't remember those times. I was just a baby back then. But my life as a kid revolved around church. I had two parents that were married, and from the outside looking in, they seemed happy, seemed pretty normal. We had a car and a house, and we paid our heat bill, and it wasn't so cold inside our house. But I don't think there's anything from my childhood that created an alcoholic, right? My parents did not drink, never saw my dad drink a sip of alcohol. In fact, he told me when I started struggling later on in life, he told me that he had only drank twice in his life. And both times he got sick, and so he never drank again. I found out later through my sister, he had told my sister the second time he drank, him and his college roommate put bed sheets on like capes and jumped out of the second story window. So maybe he did drink like me, but he was just smart enough, I guess, to quit before he became an alcoholic. But apparently he drank like me. I've jumped out of some windows myself, usually running from the police, but that's another story. So our life revolved around church. I mean, everything. My father started an orchestra at a huge Baptist church in Raleigh. That orchestra still today is like 70-something strong, horns and all that stuff, right? Like it's a full orchestra at this church. It's pretty cool. But I was in the kids choir and the youth groups and did all that stuff. And I was at church on Sunday for Bible study, and then the service, and then back for his orchestra on Tuesday nights, and then kids choir on Wednesday nights. I mean, I literally went to church 5 or 6 times a week. What I can tell you too is that later on in life, I resented some things because of what I found. What I heard in church isn't what was going on in my house. What I realized was that my parents, what they were telling people our life was like, and what our life looked like from the outside in, that's not what it was like. My sisters and I were constantly full of fear all the time, wondering when we were going to get disciplined, and when we got disciplined, we got severely disciplined, physically and emotionally, and it was rough. But that being said, I've sat on the other side of these podiums enough and heard enough stories where I know I'm not unique, and a lot of us had issues like that, and it's all kind of relative. And looking back, I realized my parents did the best that they could, and my mom and I, in fact, I spoke to her on the way here about something totally, outside of AA, but we have a good relationship today, and I love her very much. But that took this program for me to have a relationship with her. There was many, many years where I thought I would never speak to my mother again. But I didn't really start getting in trouble until middle school. I kind of did everything to the extreme, church to the extreme, sports to the extreme. When I started starting to like girls and some other stuff, I kind of switched really fast to that type of, I wanted to impress you, and whatever was cool I was going to do. I started skipping school, and within like a month of starting to skip school, I just stopped going. Like that's how I was. I did everything to an extreme. That ended me in some serious repercussions at home. I stayed grounded all the time, and so since I was grounded while we were all awake, I would sneak out of the house while everyone was asleep every day. Like literally at night, I would sneak out every night. In fact, my parents got an alarm system to keep me in. It had nothing to do with keeping people out of our house. It was literally to keep me in the house. And what I figured out was I could put little Post-it stickers on top of the motion detectors, and they wouldn't detect any motion. So I would go around and put Post-it stickers on the motion detectors so I could still sneak out at night. And that got me in a lot more trouble because nothing good is going on for a 12, 13, 14-year-old at 2 o'clock in the morning running around Raleigh. I promise you that. Some of those consequences for some of the crazy stuff that I used to do got me into it was military school or like a juvenile detention center. One of those things was going to have to happen, and I chose military school. Went to a place outside of Greensboro called Oak Ridge Military Academy. Went there for a few months, one summer, and I loved it. I fell in love with it. I excelled. I didn't get in any trouble. I shot guns and marched and ran around in camos and did all the cool stuff and thought I could do this forever. So now I'm going to join the military one day, but for now, like, I've found my calling. I'm this guy. And got back home and was thinking I was going to spend the freshman year in high school there. Well, my parents were like, yeah, that's like way out of our budget, so we're going to send you to another private school. They sent me to Friendship Christian Academy, which I'll tell you is nothing like Oak Ridge Military Academy. So that didn't go well. I got in trouble all day, every day for all types of little things. Not shaving right before school and chewing gum, like little stuff that added up, and I ended up getting kicked out of that school for literally those types of behaviors. I thought I was a really good kid during that year. I'd learned my lesson through this military school, and I'm going to be really good, and here I am, I got kicked out of school again. So my parents were willing to bite the bullet. I don't even know, they may have had to take out a loan, but to send me to another military school, and they sent me to Hargrave Military Academy for the next year of high school, my sophomore year. I did finish. I went to Wake County School after I left Friendship, finished that year, went to Hargrave the next year, and same thing, excelled. Started climbing the ranks and really good grades, and one of the best wrestlers there at Hargrave Military Academy, and was just really loving life. But You know, I hadn't become an alcoholic yet, but there were some times that I'll put it to you like this. My first drink was much younger than Hargrave Military Academy. My first drink, I was 7 or 8 years old. Like I said, it was never in our house, but there was a neighborhood party, and I snuck over to this cooler. A bunch of my friends and I, about my age, snuck over to this cooler in the yard and got a bunch of Miller High Lifes out of the cooler and threw them across the yard into some bushes, and then waited till the coast was clear, ran over to the bushes, popped them open, and drank them. Pretty much we just drank foam because we literally threw these cans, 20 feet across the yard. So I didn't really get any effects from that besides feeling like I had done something cool, something rebellious. But the next morning, I went to those same bushes by myself after breakfast and drank warm Miller High Lifes by myself that next morning. And that's kind of a testament to how I drank. I'm not going to pretend that was a spiritual experience or that moment changed my life. It didn't. I just remember it because it was kind of it was a big deal back then. But it didn't change my life. I didn't pursue alcohol every day from there. I will tell you, just before I got in that big trouble and went to Oak Ridge, I had started smoking weed, and a joint on my back porch changed the way that I felt about myself. And from that moment on, I pursued catching a buzz as often as possible. And when I started drinking, I could not stop, even from an early age. So eventually, when I was at Hargrave, I found that group of guys who did that, who drank, and there wasn't a lot of drugs or outside stuff. It was pretty much they just drank, so that's what I did. I started drinking, and we decided one weekend that it was a good idea to catch a ride to Raleigh, and because we couldn't go to Raleigh. We weren't supposed to go to Raleigh, but we had a day pass. We decided that we were going to steal a car and drive back to Raleigh. That was our solution to get to Raleigh. We could have gotten to Raleigh 100 ways, but this is how we decided to get there. In fact, to the point where the only store besides a grocery store in Chatham, Virginia, is a dollar store. And we went to the dollar store and stole a hammer and a screwdriver because I'd seen people on movies stick a screwdriver in an ignition and turn it and drive off. I'd never done anything like it, but I knew with a hammer I could get in there and turn the ignition and drive off. So I got these things. I'm going to go steal a car now, and jumped in this car that we thought was the right car, and it was a sign from God that I didn't have to do that because the keys were in the ignition. So it was like, hey, I don't have to do all that crazy stuff. This is meant to be. I'm going to Raleigh. So we did that. We went to Raleigh, and we got really scared after a while and realized we were going to get in big trouble. Came back to Chatham, Virginia, and everybody is worried about wiping our fingerprints down and all these things. And just to tell you a little bit of how I thought and how much I like watching action movies, I guess, my way of fixing that where they didn't have to worry about that was pour a bunch of gasoline in this car and light it on fire in the middle of a field. And that's exactly what I did. I literally dropped them off, drove this car into a field, poured gasoline all over it, and threw a match in it, and this thing went nuts. And of course, I'm the hero at military school. So I start doing things kind of like, not maybe to that extreme, but kind of like that more and more, which eventually got me kicked out of that school. From that point, I never went back home. I just went out, couch surfed for a while until I could afford to get my own apartment, and I drank and I worked, and that's all I did. My life, I wish I could say, or I don't wish. A lot of times I look back and say, well, I started, it was miserable from the beginning, and that's really not true. Like, I had a lot of friends. We had a lot of fun. We threw a lot of parties. Some memorable stuff. Some of it I don't know that I would take back if I could. I mean, we had a good time, met a lot of cool people. But what happened to me is what I now know is the obsession of alcohol. The mental obsession started, and I could not stop. I literally would wake up in the morning and start drinking whatever the leftovers from the night before were. I'm not going to tell you, I told you a couple stories. I won't tell you a whole bunch of those stories, but there was lots of things in my life that kind of looked like blowing up a car. I got in a lot of trouble for a lot of stuff. I went to a lot of treatment centers early, some to stay out of trouble. One of these places, a place in Durham, it's a 2-year program. I was 24 years old, and went to a 2-year program because for my alcoholism, and I got a DUI 2 nights after I left that 2-year program. I'm like one of 3% of people that starts and finishes that. So like, worked my tail off to get through it. But the minute I put alcohol in my system, there's no telling what I'm gonna do. And I even walked to the bar the night I got that DUI. Walked to the bar so I wouldn't drive. Met a pretty girl. She wanted to go to a different bar. Walked home, got my car, drove back up there to drive her to the bar so I could hang out with a pretty girl. That's just, once I start, there's no telling. So about that time, that same time as that DUI of 2006, I ran into to a high school friend who is now my wife. We started dating, and I tricked her because I kind of had my life together as far as work went. I wasn't doing any hard drugs or anything like that. I had quit smoking cigarettes a couple years before, so I basically went out a couple nights a week and drank, and when I drank, I stayed up all night drinking. But those other few days, I would go to work, I would get a paycheck, and I would pay my bills, and like I say, I tricked her. And because that's, in my head, that's all I wanted to do. But we got married, had some kids, bought a house, and things from the outside, kind of like my childhood, things from the outside looked really normal. My neighbors, except for... most of my neighbors thought we were pretty normal. Some of them got to know me and knew I was crazy when I drank. But I'd go to work and I'd come home and I'd drink tequila and Pabst Blue Ribbon. That's what I did every night because we were dead broke, and that was about all I could afford. What happened was that progressed more and more. Imagine that. To the point where I would start drinking on my lunch breaks, to where I would not go to work and go to the bar instead and tell my wife that I went to work. I had my own business for a little while back then, and so that's really all I did was go drink and relied upon other people to do projects for me and hope to make a little bit of money. And really, I just put myself in a bunch of debt and our family in a bunch of debt. Many nights, my wife went to sleep, I would steal her debit card because I was broke, and I would go get all of her money and spend all of her money overnight, and she would wake up with no money in her bank or negative balance when she went to bed, and we barely had enough to pay our bills in the first place. As my kids got a little bit older, their money would disappear. I would use their money to drink and do other stuff with. When I drank, I liked to do cocaine, to be honest with you. And so some nights when I started doing that stuff, there's just no telling where I'd end up. I'd be gone for 2 days sometimes. So my wife left me. Smart lady, she should have at that point. But I went to another program, and I was introduced to AA at that program. I was there for about 6 months, and my wife said at 6 months you can come home. And at this point that's the most sobriety in AA I have ever had up until this time in sobriety. So about 6 months I went home, I got back my wife, and so it's time to celebrate and get drunk. But my wife wasn't really sure how this thing worked either, right? So we would make deals. The book talks about a bunch of different ways that we tried to kind of manage our drinking. I tried a lot of those ways. There was a lot of only on the weekends and only here. I'll tell you my last rule. I mean, this was on the refrigerator, written down when I was allowed to drink. You might have a drinking problem if you write on the refrigerator when you're allowed to drink. But it was only on vacations. And so, like within a week of that rule, I had found and bought a camper so that we could go camping as often as possible. And I would plan camping trip after camping trip after camping trip. And needless to say, I was usually drunk before we got there. I could not wait for these camping trips because I was allowed to drink. And always had to hide the amounts that I drank. So that was the last rule. After that didn't work. She knew what I had known a long time is that I couldn't drink like normal men. Throughout about 8 to 10 years of coming in and out of AA, I had never, besides that one stint I told you, I was in a program and got almost 6 months. Coming in and out of AA for about 8 years. I don't think I ever got 90 days sober. I kind of came in, and even when I wanted it and had the desperation, I think y'all just kept me sober for a little while. I just kind of followed you guys around for a little while until the obsession got to the point I couldn't do anything but drink. I never had a solution. So what happened was I started working down on the coast of North Carolina for my business, and we were very successful at this point in time, doing a bunch of Hurricane Florence cleanup, and I didn't have anybody to tell me how and when to drink, and so I was able to do what I wanted when I wanted. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I got caught just because of how I sounded on the phone. Like, she'd be like, "Oh my God, you are wasted." No, I'm not, you know. But it got bad. It got bad. It got to the point where every waking moment, I was obliterated. I had kind of built up this little business where I had enough people that they were working, and I could just drink all the time. And that's what I did. I mean, from the moment I got up, I was doing substances and drinking all day, every day. I usually had to take something to go to sleep if I didn't pass out, and then wake up and I would drink before I could put food inside my stomach. My wife doesn't drink a lot. She very rarely gets drunk. I think I've probably, since I've been sober, I think I've seen her drunk twice. Well, she called me one night drunk, and I asked her why how dare her get drunk when I'm supposed to be sober, knowing that I had been completely wasted for the last 6 months every day. But how dare she do that? And she said, "Well, I'll tell you why I got drunk tonight was so I could tell you what I've been wanting to tell you for months, and that is that I want a divorce. No more treatments, no more rules, no more whatever. I'm done with you." And what I realized that night was that she was all that I had that was good. Her and my children. Everything else that was my own doing, she held everything together. She was the glue that held our house, our kids, and all their extracurricular stuff, and paid the bills. And I mean, I'm telling you what, I could not pay a $25 Boost Mobile cell phone bill on time. I couldn't do it. She would have to cut my phone back on every single month because I couldn't afford a $25. Yet here I am down here buying the bar shots, but I couldn't pay a cell phone bill. What I realized was she was the glue, and I had nothing besides her. And something happened to me, or came over me, that had never really come over me, and that was the idea of suicide. I've always kind of been one to say, well, that's selfish and all this stuff. And at that moment, it seemed like a really good idea. So I told my wife, if that's what you want to do, then bye, whatever. I told her I was going to kill myself. I walked down to the beach. I kicked off my shoes. I told her goodbye, pretty much, probably. I don't remember, I was really drunk, but something along the lines of, this is your fault. Left the cell phone on. Not that she could hear me, it's a bunch of waves and wind, but left the cell phone on, kicked my flip-flops off, and went for a swim. And my thought was, I'm going to swim so far out, I'll get so tired that I'm just going to drown. And I won't be able to get back. So that's what I did, and it worked. I got tired, and I realized pretty quick I wasn't going to make it back. And so I started sinking. And when I started sinking, I realized that I was in about this deep water. I was in about 3 feet of water, 4 feet of water, and I stood up and walked back to the beach. It had taken me, like, if y'all know where Emerald Isle, North Carolina is, the current took me to Indian Beach. And I had to walk all the way back from Indian Beach barefoot, trying to find my phone and flip-flops, and was like, that was a terrible idea. But what that did that night, I called her the next morning, and I apologized and asked her if she remembered everything she said. She said yes, and I said, are you okay? She said no. She asked me if I was okay. I said no. And I said, do you still feel that way? And she said, absolutely. And I needed I needed to tell you that, like, it's over. I love you, and I want you to be part of our kids' life, but it's over. So I knew what to do. It was the only way to deal with that is to go to the ABC store. So I did, and bought a couple 10-packs of airplane bottles, some whiskey, and drank one 10-pack and started on the second before I had the courage, if you will. I know now that's the wrong word, but the courage to commit suicide. I took a whole lot of pills that afternoon, and I fell asleep. And I woke up 4 days later in a hospital. And when I woke up, something was different. You guys, I'd hung out with you guys enough, and I had once known this God that I trusted as a child. Had once known a God, and I'd seen you guys' life transform over those 8 or 10 years. I'd watched guys stay sober and their lives get better, and they become these things that I just knew I could never be. But I thought that day in that hospital, like, I got one more shot. I know what to do. I've had great sponsorship. I just haven't taken advantage of it. I've got great meetings. I just don't do what they tell me to do, and I'm not of service. I'm surely not doing anything selfless at these places. I'm just going and drinking the coffee and eating the cookies. So I went to treatment, and I got really, really active at that place. At that place I went to treatment. I went to treatment in Wilmington, North Carolina. Got really, really active there. Found a sponsor that I found a sponsor quick there, and worked the first 3 and started 4 with him, and realized pretty quick that I'd picked the wrong guy. Not any fault of his. It's just he wasn't. I was so willing at this point, and I had so much desperation that I ate, breathed, whatever. AA. Like, that's all I wanted to do was work through the steps and see if it was going to. This was it. This is the last, what do they say, the last house on the block or whatever. That's what this was. This was my last shot, so I was going to give it everything I had. So I found another sponsor who was willing to work me through the steps quickly, and that I did. I did the first 2 pretty quick. Met him at a church a lot like this at my home group, and snuck off into a room and did a 3rd step prayer, and we read together, and I read some on my own, and I started writing a list, and I wrote a thorough list, and about 2 weeks, I was doing a 5th step, excuse me, and I tell you, the fourth and fifth step, I didn't wake up from those steps and wake up the next morning and my life was changed. What I did feel though was that I knew I was not faking it anymore, and that when I sat down there, I didn't feel like a hypocrite because I was giving it all I had, and I was totally honest with this man. I told him some stuff that I didn't know that if I could ever tell anybody. And his reaction to it was very moved, just very, okay, you know. What else? I was like, really? But, I continued working the steps, and what I found in my story, the 9th step, there's a bunch of promises in here during the 9th step, and that's when my life really started looking different. That's when I started feeling different, and from what I can tell, that's when I had a spiritual experience. I think I had one in that hospital that morning that I woke up and said, hey, this is it. You got one more shot at this. You've been asleep for 4 days. That's 4 days sober. Maybe you can get 5. That's a little bit of a spiritual experience, maybe a big one. But I tell you, making amends, I started to feel different about myself. I started to feel like a new person. I've made a lot of my amends. There's probably still some. No, there are still some that have to be made. But I'll tell you a cool story about one of them. I was living in Wilmington at a halfway house, had a job, not making a whole lot of money. I was paying my wife at this point. My sponsor made it very clear, don't overcommit to what you can pay her, but whatever you say you're going to pay her. Every week, give her the same amount of money without exception, no matter what situation that puts you in or how uncomfortable that makes you. She's been supporting your family for 13 years. So give her what you can and follow through with what you say. So I didn't have a lot of money. I'm paying my own rent. I'm paying for my own phone. Now I'm paying my wife this, and I've got a decent job. But my wife, sheriff knocks on her door in Raleigh, and it's a civil suit against me for about $4,000. At that point, $4,000 might as well have been $4 million. I mean, it's literally the same thing. You're asking me to pay $4,000 or asking me to pay $4 million. They're both. I can't do either one. But I talked with the guy and I talked with the sheriff, and we arranged that I would pay this gentleman $400 a month. And so I made it work, and I started paying him back. And I tell you, I got a better job really quickly. Bills everything became affordable. Like basically my finances started falling into place when I started making that financial amends. So after about 9 months of sobriety and doing the things I said I was going to do, I had been catching Greyhound buses back to Raleigh to spend some time with my kids, and I had bought my kids tablets so that we can FaceTime. And I told you I used to take their money. I used to take their devices, and I would sell their devices so I could have money to pay for my drinking. And today I can say that that they all have really nice iPhones and iPads, and I've paid their service since I was about 6 months sober, and their service has never been interrupted. So that's a pretty cool feeling for a dad that I went from taking from them to today, like all their friends and everybody else, they can have nice stuff, and it works, and their dad's a part of that, which is pretty cool. About 9 months sober, my wife told me on one of those trips home that my new lifestyle was attractive, and she would be interested in dating me, which is weird because we had been married, I think, 11 or 12 years at the time that we started dating again, and so we did. We did. We started a new relationship. She told me I had about a year to come home, and I told her that let's do it, but let's do it slowly. Let's make a plan, and let's follow that plan. That me moving home impulsively sounds like something that I would have done a year ago at that time. And so we did. I made like a 6-month plan where I started coming home a little more and more. And when I did come home, sometimes I'd stay a little bit longer, and a week here at a time, and a week there at a time. And I gave my job a 2 weeks notice. Like, that's crazy. I would never do that before. I'd just leave, and then I'd yell at them for not giving me my check fast enough, you know. But you know, I left a job on good standings in Wilmington. I left a halfway house on good standings in Wilmington. I still to this day have sponsees in Wilmington. I still have a guy who I consider like a sponsor. When I did move back to Raleigh, I got a local sponsor, but the gentleman there that I worked those 12 steps with, for the first time ever, he means the world to me, and we talk quite often. But when I got back to Raleigh, those promises that I was talking about, they became very, very apparent. This wife that there was no chance of getting back with her. We started a new relationship. I got a job really, really quickly, doing well, and my relationship with my kids has grown and become something that I didn't think I'd ever have. I didn't think I could ever be the type of father that I saw other people being. I didn't think I had that capability, and I don't think old Steve did. But you know, the book talks when the book says, I love it when it says we were reborn, because that's how I feel. I feel reborn. I'm not the same person that I was 2.5 years ago. So when I got to Raleigh, the things I started doing looked a lot like what they looked like when I got out of treatment in Wilmington. I got really, really active in AA here, or I say here in Raleigh. I got a sponsor. I worked through the steps again with that sponsor. Not because I was worried about drinking, not because of the same obsession that I'm used to having, but because I knew that I had to do the deal, and I knew that if I didn't give it all, and I became complacent, that it was going to end up just like it had ended up for those 8 years where I was in and out with 30, 60, 90 days. So I joined a home group. I became active there. Started getting there early. And when I say early at our home group meets at 7 o'clock. I didn't go over that before. They're gonna ding me at There's a Solution for not telling you the whole format and times and all that. But don't tell anybody. When I say you got to be there early at There's a Solution, the meeting starts at 7, and I swear to God, people are there setting up at 4. Like, no joke. There's people. The meeting is set up by 5, and we're off to go eat dinner. And, so when I say I got there early, I mean like I got there early. I spent about 6 hours at home group twice a week. But I do that today still. I don't get there at 4 anymore, but I get there early, and I fellowship with the guys, and I help set up. And I'm actually I have a service position there. I have sponsees that I help work through the steps if they're willing, and some of them I get to watch their lives just turn around the way mine did, and that's a really, really cool thing to witness. I think everything happens the way it's kind of supposed to, but I know that I would have saved myself and my family a whole lot of pain if I would have worked through the steps that way. When I first came into the rooms of AA, you don't have to sit here for 8 or 10 years and be miserable. You can come in here once and stay sober. Unfortunately, that's not my story. But I will tell you today, I own a business, and it's very successful at the moment. We'll see where it goes. We're happy. My wife and I bought a new house, and we have all the things and the stuff. I can tell you that's not why I keep doing what I'm doing. I keep doing what I'm doing because Because today I'm really far from wanting a drink. There's nothing that sounds good about a drink or a drug in my life today. I do know that if I do not continue what y'all have taught me, that desire comes back. I've heard. I have a good friend who has shown me that after multiple years. He's back out drinking, and it's really sad because I remember at one time where this gentleman was an active member and lived freely and didn't obsess over drinking. And today he's a train wreck. And so I do know that I've got to stick around and I've got to continue doing what I'm doing. I've got to improve my relationship with God, and I've got to help others. So that's what I plan on doing. I tell y'all this morning, today was going to be a crazy day for me at work. This morning I got up and I said my prayers and I meditated. I got the house ready for breakfast ready and all that stuff for the kids. And by the time I did that and the time I got out of the door, I had already I had no serenity in my life, I'll tell you that. I was about as agitated as a man can be between the puppy running around and the kid that didn't want to get up for school and the one that can't find his uniform and the this and that. And we pulled out of the neighborhood. And when you do pull out of my neighborhood, there's this huge, it's like a 50-foot steel cross a farmer put on his land. And it's right when you pull out, you see it. And I saw that, and that calmed me down just a little bit. And I kind of deep sighed. And one of my daughters said, "Dad, what's wrong?" And I'm like, "I'm just stressed out. I got a lot to do today, and I don't have enough time to do it all." And my 11-year-old said, she said, "Dad, today is just another day. Why don't you try to break it up 1 hour at a time and do the best you can for 1 hour at a time. And at the end of the day, whatever you got done, that's all you could do. And you did your best." And I'm thinking, this 11-year-old, she needs to be the one that's up here talking to y'all. Y'all probably have a whole lot better time listening to her. But, that blew my mind. Like, I don't know if she heard that something from me talking to my wife or having sponsees over and hearing me talk to them, or, gosh, she might have picked the dang book up and started reading it. I don't know. But I needed to hear that this morning because I was trying to take on the world by myself. And I tell you something, that without God and the men that I've put in my life around me, I can't do a thing. Not well, at least. It'll all come crashing down pretty quick. So it's a testament to AA. If you're sitting in here and you're new and you're wondering if this thing works, this thing works. And for me, it was the last option. I wanted it to work some other way. I wanted to come in here and get better at drinking. I wanted to come in here and figure out a way to drink like a lot of the people that are out there, and like my wife, I wanted to get why can't I do that? If for me, being an alcoholic, that's not an option. I can't come in here to be a normal drinker, but if I'm ready and I'm willing to come in here to quit drinking and to find a relationship with God, it's possible, and anybody can have it. That's pretty cool. I think I'm done, guys. Thanks for having me.